Good morning, class. Welcome to another day at Huntington University, DM 330. Today we're going to be talking about, you guys are going to be pitching your films on Monday, pitching your film ideas. So pitching the concept, which is different than pitching the whole finished screenplay. So today we're going to talk about the different things that we're going to do, that you need to do to go through, the steps you kind of need to go through to come up with your film's premise, the synopsis, the log line, and we're going to do a one-page pitch sheet, and we're going to show you how to do that. So what we're going to do first is talk about the protagonist character sheet. Now this is something that gives you the background on your character, and you have to go through and really understand who your character is. It helps you really understand who your character is so you can kind of write them organically, or so they can actually write themselves kind of. So the first thing we'll do is a protagonist character sheet. Then we'll go over how to do a log line again. And then we're going to go over how to do a short synopsis of your story and how you can kind of work out the beats of your story. So then all those things will be going on your one-page pitch sheet. So we're going to start out first with the protagonist character sheet. First film pitch materials. You're going to be pitching on Monday, everybody. You're going to have 5 minutes to pitch your idea. So today, I really want to talk through, I want people to bring out some of their ideas, a couple of their ideas that they're going to pitch, because I know we're working on the exact film idea that we want to have. But today I'd like to, in the rest of after we're done with this video, have people come up to the microphone and then really talk through some of their ideas, because you're going to have to think it through with this material to do it on Monday. So here we go. We've got our first film pitch materials. So the first thing we've got is a protagonist character sheet. For this pitch, I'm only going to have you do the protagonist character sheet. You're going to have to do one for the antagonist and actually all the characters for the final pitch that you do for Lance at the end of the semester. But right now we'll just do the protagonist character sheet so you can really think through what they're doing, who they are. I've given you the information. I've given you a handout to do that, so you can just do that and fill in all those blanks. You're going to have to turn this in on Wednesday. The rest of the pitch materials you can turn in next week. So you'll have a full week to do it, so you can really think through your characters, because we're going to have a guest speaker on Wednesday, so we won't have any homework then. So you can just think through all of this stuff and really work on it and get your concepts down. So as you can see with the protagonist character sheet, you're going to want all their information: their name, age, birthday year, how old they are, spouse, physical characteristics, hair, eyes, height, weight, physical, mental health, race, clothing, parents, you want their family background, who the siblings are, friends, who their enemies are, what their beliefs are, religious, career, dreams, life goals, speech patterns. Very helpful to know all this stuff. And then the next thing is we want to know their hobbies, likes, dislikes, fears, strengths, weaknesses, habits, turn-ons, turn-offs, natural talents, temperament, background, both happiest and saddest moments. I mean, it may seem ridiculous that you have to know your character this well, but you really do. Okay. So with the protagonist character sheet also, as you're thinking through your characters, as you're going through the sheet and thinking through who the character is, you're going to also, figure out what their desires are, what they want, what they really want, what their motivations are. And you can do all this with the protagonist character sheet. So it's going to be very helpful when you're actually writing the synopsis and the log lines to know who your characters are, what they want, what their stakes are, what their desires are. So the next thing is, the protagonist character sheet is, ask what the character's major goals are. Why is this goal so important to the character? Are there any events in the character's past that affect the significance of this goal? Describe your character's life till now, motivations, blah, blah, blah. What's the one thing in the world your character would do anything to avoid? Why? What has already been done to avoid this? What do you see him doing in the future to avoid it? What's the one thing in your world your character would do anything in the world to have? Why? Have they tried to obtain it? So there you're getting into your desires. The stakes and the desires. So, yeah, so you guys will turn that in on next Monday, or excuse me, on Wednesday. And hopefully you'll have thought through all of these things and it will help you to do your one-page pitch sheet. Okay, the next thing you need to know, and this is another sheet, everything on this PowerPoint I've given to you in paper form, or Jason's printed out and given to you, so that you can work through this and develop your log line. You remember last week we talked about high concept films. So your log line really comes from your high concept film idea, or your, well, high or low, whatever the concept is. It comes from your concept. So we're going to define high concept again. And the more you can be high concept, the more awards you're going to win, the more likely Lance is going to pick your film, the more likely your film, if executed well, will win things at the film festivals, and it'll be good for you in your career, actually. So the more high concept you can do, the better on your junior and senior projects. So first of all, you have to determine what the entertainment value is. What's the entertainment level? You know, how interesting is it to people? Is it going to keep them awake? Are they going to be intrigued? Is it going to hook them and catch their attention? Also, the next thing is, how original is the take? So what originality, like we talked about before, is you take a familiar context and you do an original take on it. So for Dracula, Count Dracula, Dracula chases people, and hunts them down. But in the original take, the people hunt Dracula down. So it'd be, it's just, you kind of flip the context of what you have, you can do that. And then the third, you ask how unique is the idea. And a unique idea, as we talked about before, is an idea that has never been done, or you haven't really seen that much. Then how visual is the idea? You want to create a story that's going to create that when the reader reads the script, they can see it. They can see the story. They can visualize this person in the setting and everything. So it has to lend itself to really good cinematography and interesting shots and stuff like that. You have to think about that because it makes it more high concept and more interesting to people. Because film is a visual medium, so the more visual you are, the better it is. So then you have to think about, how is the root emotion underlying the premise? So if it's a movie about somebody who's angry all the time, and at the end of it they forgive and move on, then anger would be the emotion underlying the premise, which I wouldn't advise. It's kind of boring, or kind of just being so negative all the time. One thing I would advise too is being very positive, trying to do positive stories. As screenwriters, we tend to process out our negative stuff as we write, and then it ends up being on the page instead of something productive or constructive or positive or whatever. It's always the negative story. Maybe it has a redemptive ending, but it's always the negative story. So now, one thing I would encourage is that you guys try to do positive stories, stories that show positive change. That's just my encouragement. I mean, you can do what you want, but okay. So then you have to describe the target audience. So, like Star Wars, the target audience would be anybody. But I thought that when I watched the Twilight series, I thought that was really targeted for teenagers and preteens. The target audience. I thought it was very, very simple, very simplistic, not that interesting. The story wasn't that complicated. It wasn't really for a mature audience, I didn't think. So you have to know who your audience is. If you're making it for teenagers, great. If you're making it for kids, great. If you're making it for a broad audience, you need to know who your audience. You need to know who you're talking to, and you need to write to your audience, because nobody writes for themselves. So you got to know that. And then write the what if question. So a compelling, the question that Jurassic Park pitched was, what if dinosaurs could be cloned? So that was a what if question for Jurassic Park. There's a lot of what if questions, but think about it for yours. And then write the hook. So then the hook is what really makes your story interesting. It's what's going to grab the audience. So keep it concise and visual. So you really need that on your log line. So developing your log line. So when you write the log line, you need to do it in one short sentence, sometimes two. Some people do it in 2 sentences, but it's better if it's one. That's the goal. And a good format to use, and this really works if you can think through it this way. You start with the protagonist and what they're doing. Then you show what they want, and what their action is, what they're going for. Then you show what how the antagonist is the force that's coming against what they want. And then you show what their goals are and the stakes to getting those goals. So I thought that was a really good way to think through your log line. So the Pirates of the Caribbean, like we talked about last week, the Curse of the Black Pearl, that was one that log line showed everything. So I'm going to show you how it's broken down here. So first it talks about the protagonist. Blacksmith Will Turner teams up with his eccentric pirate captain Jack Sparrow. Okay, so now you know who the protagonist and his sidekick are. Then the action and the goal was to save his love, the governor's daughter. And what do they save him from? The antagonist, former pirate allies, and the stakes, who are now undead. So they're allies, but now they have to deal with supernatural. So that raises the stakes a little bit. They're not dealing with just people, they're dealing with supernatural things. So the logline reads, Blacksmith Will Turner teams up with an eccentric pirate, Captain Jack Sparrow, to save his love, the governor's daughter, from Jack's former pirate allies who are now undead. That's one long sentence, but it's a really good logline, and they show that the protagonist, the action, the antagonist, the goals, desires, and stakes. So when you think through your thing, once you do the synopsis, you'll probably know the action. You'll know all these things. You'll know the protagonist, the action, the antagonist, goals, desires. You'll have that written down. Okay. So the next thing we're going is how to write the pitch synopsis. Now, the synopsis should be 1 page. It can be 2 pages, page and a half, depending how wordy you are. But you should be able to write it and rewrite it till it's boiled down to just the bare elements, and to do it that way. But here's the tips. So the first thing is what we're going to do. We're going to use the basic story structure that we've been learning about since day 1 of class. You know, the 9 structures. You guys know what I'm talking about. So use the basic story structure, and we're going to go through that in these slides, so you don't have to worry about remembering what those are, because I think you guys have written a lot of papers on them, and you're doing a pretty good job of identifying what they are. So I'm not worried about that. So then I've presented a worksheet, and all you have to do really is fill in the questions on the worksheet below. And there's examples from the original Star Wars movie, the first one. I think it was the fourth Star Wars 4, but it was the first movie that they made. So then you fill in the questions on the worksheet below, then take a pass at what you wrote and tighten it up a bit. Then the best thing to do is only work with 3 characters, 2 or 3. So when you're writing in the synopsis, you don't have to involve all the subplots or anything. You just need to stick to the main points and the main characters. So you should have the protagonist and antagonist, definitely. But if there's a love interest, include that, or a sidekick, like Jack Sparrow was to the blacksmith, although it became Jack Sparrow's movie, really. But so just include maybe 3 characters in your synopsis. And then don't worry about subplots. Stick to the main points. And then tell how it ends. Sometimes people do, when they pitch to studios and stuff, they think that by not telling the ending, they're creating mystery. But when you're talking to the audience, you may not tell them the end right away. But when you're pitching to a studio exec or a producer, they want to know the whole story. They want to know the beginning, middle, and the end. So the better you can do that, the better. Okay. So writing the pitch synopsis. Use this template and fill in the blanks. So the first thing you start out with is an opening image. And the image is a setting and concept that sets the stage for the story to come. And I did that. I did this on your sheet. You can read through it. I gave you out a sheet for this. And but so at the beginning of Star Wars, so you need an image, a setting, a concept that sets the stage for the story to come. So for Star Wars, it was long ago in a galaxy far, far away, a controlling government called the Empire takes control of planets, systems, and people. Anyone who resists it is debilitated. So that was how they started out. So you give you give the whole concept of the story. Then the second thing is the protagonist intro. So you say, who is the main character, give a 1 to 2 descriptive words, and say what he or she wants. So that for Star Wars, it was Luke Skywalker. He was a farm boy with a knack for robotics, dreams of a day of leaving his desert homeland. Okay, so we know what Luke Skywalker wants. We don't know right now yet what adventure he's going on, but we know he wants to leave the desert. So the inciting incident, basically, so you say what event, decision, change prompts the main character to take initial action. So the inciting incident for that would be Luke Skywalker buys 2 robots, and R2-D2 has a video of Princess Leia saying, "Come and save us! We're being, overtaken by the Death Star or whatever." So then number 4, the call to action. So you're just going to go through this and answer these questions. What's the first turning point? What action does the main character take? Does he or she make changes in the book's direction, or if you're doing an adaptation, I guess. Once he or she crosses this line, there's no going back. So the call to action or the point of no return, put that in there. Then the conflicts and character encounters. Now, in a new life, the main character meets new people, experiences a new life, and meets the antagonist villain. So for Luke Skywalker, Luke Skywalker he goes with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then they hire what's his name? Chewbacca's guy. Anyway, they hire him, Han Solo, and they go off, and then they find Darth Vader and figure out how Darth Vader is gonna, go against them. Okay, so then the midpoint. What's the middle turning point? What happens that causes the main character to make a 180-degree change in direction, in emotion, in anything? Again, he or she has crossed this line. So after the point of no return, you got to figure out what happens. Okay. Then, for number 7, winning seems imminent, but so they get what happens that makes the main character think he or she will win. She seems to think she has the upper hand, but oh no, the antagonist defeats her and rushes off more powerful than ever before. So that is where you sort of get where they get defeated. They feel like there's almost no hope, and they get disappointed. This is usually at the end of the second act, before the final showdown and the resolution. So they look like they're not going to get what they want right here. And so you have to do that with your character. Show that they're not going to get what they want. Then the crisis, the main character is lower than low. He or she must fight through the blackness of his or her emotions to find strength to the final battle. So you find out and here they usually find out, during the crisis, they usually know what happened, and they usually learn something about themselves in that. But they do have to, muster up the courage to try again, even though everything was lost. So then the climax showdown, what happens to the final blowout between the main character and the antagonist? Then the resolution, does everyone live happily ever after? Blah, blah, blah. And then the final image, what's the final image you want to leave with your reader? Has the main character succumbed to his or, okay, this is for books, but has the main character succumbed to his or her own demons, or he or she built a new life? So usually you start out your film, with them in their normal condition, and then in the final image, they restored back to equilibrium, but it's a new normal, but it's still normal. So that would be writing the pitch. So what you can do is go over this pitch thing. It shows the whole examples for all these points, all 11 points, and what they did with Star Wars, what the writers of Star Wars did, I think George Lucas and some other people. So, and then you see the whole synopsis together at the end of the page, so you can read it all. And then you can do yours that way too. So then what we're going to do is what we're doing all this background work for, writing the synopsis, writing the log line, knowing who your protagonist is. That's all the background work to write your one-page pitch. So the one-page pitch is something that everybody uses in all different kinds of businesses. But in the film business, what you do, you go in and pitch to a producer, and then the producer will, either if he likes it or if he doesn't like it, if he hasn't told you he likes it, you leave that pitch thing behind. What it's got on it is the film name, the genre, the log line, sometimes a tagline, your synopsis, and then your contact information and contact information of your agent. So you guys probably won't have to put your contact information on. I already have it, but if you want to do it correctly, you can do that. But so let me show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. You guys are going to have to do, like I said before, you're going to have to, this is just a small pitch. You're going to have to, it'll be good for you to have this when you have your final film done, but you may have to redo the synopsis if you write kind of a different story than what you're pitching for your concept. So even for a concept, you have to know the full story when you're pitching a concept to a producer or a studio executive. So that's why we're going through this. And it seems like a lot of work and it seems hard, but you have to do this. And you need to do that even when you're pitching your story concept. Now, in class today, you just pitch your concept a little bit and we'll be talking about it and working through it. But when you pitch it on Monday, you're really going to have thought through at least many of the points, at least the basic points. If you don't have all of it, that's fine. It's, you haven't written it yet, but I want you to think through as much as you can, as much as possible, and to make the story as clear as possible. Okay, so the last thing is showing how to do the one-page pitch. Okay, the one-page pitch. So I'm giving you how to do it with fonts and this is what they recommend in Hollywood. So they say that the first 3 items should be centered all caps and use Arial font for the whole thing, a regular font, not Courier, but Arial or New Times Roman or something like that. Something easy to read and common. So the first thing you center is the name of the film, then you put the genre, and then you put by you. And it shows what fonts to use and how to do it. So then if you have a tagline, you put that next, then you put the log line, and then that's followed by the pitch synopsis. And the synopsis should be a brief outline of the conflicts, characters, and plot. Now, the synopsis worksheet that I gave you is very detailed. So it doesn't have to be as detailed as this, and if you want to, you could just write out answers to the questions if you want to. Just put call to action and then answer the questions. You could do that for the synopsis, but I'd prefer that you write a three paragraph thing and boil it all down that way. So then the footer, it should be 1 or 2 pages. So the footer, you just include your name, email, phone number, and your agent's and manager's info. And then what I showed here was what Star Wars looked like as a one-page pitch. So as you can see, Star Wars, the movie, sci-fi fantasy feature film proposal by George Lucas. Then the tagline is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. The log line, a science fiction fantasy about a native but ambitious farm boy from a backwater desert who discovers powers he never knew he had when he teams up with a feisty princess, a mercenary space pilot, and an old wizard warrior to lead a ragtag rebellion against the sinister forces of evil galactic empire. One sentence. A very long sentence, but they got it all in one sentence, believe it or not. So in the synopsis, I'm not going to read that through here. You guys have that on your handout. You can read through it. But I really want you to try to write out a synopsis and a 1.5 page or 2 page synopsis if it's hard, or 1 page. And just do the 1-page pitch. So what you're going to have to turn in is your 1-page pitch, and that's what you're going to have to turn in next week. So the developing your log line and the developing your pitch synopsis, that should be, the end log line should be on your pitch thing, and the synopsis should be too, so I don't need that. But the 1-page pitch I will need next week. That's what you're going to turn in. So, but you do have to work through all this stuff, and hopefully it's not going to be too hard. It's harder when you're just pitching a concept, but like I said, in Hollywood, if you're pitching a concept, you have to know the whole concept. So like today when we're pitching, if we're just talking through stuff, you don't have to have the whole concept. That's fine. we'll walk through, maybe help you, finish your concept or whatever. It's good to have help from people. So let's get to the other stuff in the class, and this video is over.